Hey everyone, this is Simon Raymonde, and I was in that band, Cocteau Twins.
Hey Simon, I'm Grady Sandlin. Nice to
Hey,
meet you.
Grady. Yeah, Grady, nice to meet you too.
Thanks for being here.
hmm
Or you're at home. Where are you at right now?
Yeah, I live by the sea in Brighton, in the south of England, just about an hour or so on the train out of London, and I moved down here with my wife about 13 years ago, out of London and down to the coast, and yeah, it's the best move I ever made, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's oh, what is that?
I don't know.
Oh, hold on a minute. Severe notice, severe alert issued by the UK government. There is a very high risk of wildfires nationally. People should not undertake any activity that could start a fire. No shit. Wow, that was the government making my phone do that.
Don't start any fires.
Yeah. No, I'm going to turn that off because I know all about that. I'm an adult. um, okay, so where were we? Yes, I live in Brighton and moved down here 13 years ago from London and spent my whole life in London and then just decided I had enough of it. And it's been a great move because, well, it's lovely being by the sea. Do you know what I mean? It's all right. It's lovely being by the sea because there's a certain peacefulness to it when you want there to be, and kind of the wind and the rain in the winter is kind of how you'd want it to be too. So you know you're alive. You know it's a really great place to live. Brighton is a beautiful town with so much music, so many great venues. So yeah, I feel quite blessed to be here. We sort of pinch ourselves sometimes when we're coming home and we're cycling along the side of the sea, and it's like, wow, we actually live here. It's amazing.
Are you involved in the music scene there?
Very much so. We moved here 2012. I moved here 2012. My wife moved over from the US. She's American. She moved over in 2013, and we set up shop here. And very quickly, she found a really good spot for us to have a record shop. We'd always dreamed of having a record shop together.
Oh
Um,
man.
I mean, separately before we even knew each other, and when we once we did get together as a couple, and then we saw this tiny little shop, and it was literally big enough to swing a cat. It's so tiny, but we thought it'd be a really cool place to have a Bella Union record shop. So, like, not compete with the other record shops in the area and do something that's very, very, very niche, but could be kind of cool for bands to come and visit and do in stores and do special events and things. So we in that original shop for about 2014, about 5 or 6 years. I had a great time in there, and then COVID happened, and we ended up doing a lot of stuff from home, like selling from home, and then actually I would go around. I would do local deliveries in my car. I would just go around and take records around to people's houses and drop them outside the door and ring the bell and kind of run off. And that was a lot of fun. And then we found another space in about 2022, which we enjoyed, but we only stayed there for a year or two until we found the current place we're in now, which is incredible. It's like a full building where we have management offices, studio, all the back line for the in-stores, a massive big shop, and where we do all the fulfillment for all the labels or online orders. We have staff. We have about like 10 different staff in the building. So it's things have really changed since we moved into this new place, because instead of having a shop at one end of town, which we used to have, and then an office at the other end of town, we're now all in the same building, and it's so much nicer. And yeah, we couldn't really be happier. We couldn't do that in London. We couldn't have a shop in London, couldn't afford it.
Right.
So you can actually be an entrepreneur in the same way. You look at the kids from Midlake. We'll talk about them later, I'm sure. But talking about Denton, you can be a businessman in Denton because the living standard of living is affordable, and the rent is affordable for if you want to take on and start up a new business. And that's kind of what we did here.
That's so cool. I I myself have a dream of owning a record store. I'm in my office right now, and I'm surrounded by records. And I have a home office too, and I love them. I want to like not only have them for myself, but also get them in the hands of other people who love them.
Right on.
And that seems like kind of goes hand in hand with what I know about you and Bella Union, that you have like this great enthusiasm for music and maybe a bit of a want to share good music with other people. Would that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I think over the years that's sort of become obvious. I think initially I didn't really know that. I think doing the label, you sort of, what is it? We're coming up to our 30th year next year. So I've definitely grown into it and learned, as you do, as you get older in life, you learn some of the things you're not too bad at. And I think I am good at helping people. I actually do enjoy helping people because the music business has given me a lot as a musician. I've had a lot out of it, obviously with my old band, and doing the label, you sort of feel like, okay, well, it's not like my time as a musician is over. It's not. I still really enjoy making music, but certainly the things that I've learned as a musician, whether it be touring or signing to a major or signing to an indie, there's lots of things that I've done in my career as a musician that I think I could be helpful to know if you were a young musician coming up, finding the whole thing very confusing, as a lot of bands do. So definitely. My past career it helps me do my current career, but yeah, helping is a beautiful thing, right? It's always nice whether you're helping an old lady across the road or helping a band make a record or make a decision on a song. It feels good because you feel like, okay, I contributed something today. It might not be life changing, but we can't all be doctors and nurses, right?
Sure. Was your motivation when starting a label going, you'd been in a successful band, and is there some part of you that says, I can do this? Like, we can, what is your motivation for?
Well, that's a good question, because initially the motivation was not to run a record label, to be a helpful person, helping develop new artists. That actually was not the intention at all. The intention was to start a label to put out our own records, the Cocteau Twins, that is. And it didn't work out because the band kind of broke up very soon after we started the label. So in a way, the label was like there, and what am I going to do now? Now I don't have my band anymore. Like, what am I going to do with my time? Well, I suppose we could put a record out. I could put a solo record out and see what happens to that. And that was sort of the first step. And then it was like, oh well, that didn't go too badly. Maybe we could, I don't know, put out someone else's record and see how it goes. So that's sort of what happened. And we didn't really know what we were doing for a few years at least, but we had enthusiasm, and that can carry you along in those first early years where you're just working out stuff. And then I think what happened was, me and Robin, who'd set up the label together, he was in the band, the Cocteaus, with me, or rather I was in the band with him. He decided he didn't want to do it. If Cocteau Twins wasn't putting records out anymore, which we weren't, he didn't really find the whole record label thing much fun. And to be honest with you, I totally get that, because it isn't generally. But I didn't really have anything else to do. And once I'd started it, I felt, well, it doesn't work with both of us running it, because this is too much of a conflict of what he wants to do and what I want to do, and my musical taste and his musical taste. Very, very different. So he moved away to France, got married to his French girlfriend for a few years, and he's happily still settled there, to whatever it is, 30 years later. So I just kind of picked up the baton, I suppose, and just ran with it. Well, not really run, sort of stumbled along aimlessly. And And that was kind of how we're here, because really, I don't know how we're here 30 years later. I mean, how did that happen? I guess just one weird set of experiences follow another, and then you just carry on doing it. Because I'm stubborn. I'm really, really stubborn and don't like losing, or not. It's not losing exactly. It's like, I don't like it being a failure. So I really strive to do as well as I possibly can. I guess that becomes harder and harder in this current climate, because the music business doesn't make any sense to anybody, not even people that have been in it as long as I have. So maybe we're coming to some kind of denouement with the whole thing. I don't know. Maybe I'll carry on. I don't know. It's like it's a very confusing time.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to that. I'm very stubborn too, and I relate to this. If you don't give up, if you don't quit, then after that 30-year milestone, I mean, that's huge. And at some point, when you don't give up, you people have to acknowledge that you've stuck around as long as you have, and
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, that's true. I mean, there's no gold watch for me. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
oh, right.
But I think, it does feel like, well, I got to make it to 30 at least. 29 would be a really rotten place to check out. But, every time I think, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, which I do think from time to time, because as we said there, it's an utterly confusing industry.
Mm-hmm.
I find a band or I find a piece of music that's like, oh, well, I can forget that stupid idea of giving up. I have to work with this artist or this song or this band or whoever it is. It renews. There's constant renewing. It's like snakes losing their skin. Every time you shed one, you think, oh, well, I guess I'm going to die now. But then another skin forms and you're off you go. And I think that's how it is with me. I'm up and down with the music business, maybe more down with it than I have been in the past. But I think that's just because that's how everyone feels. I don't know a band that isn't going, why are we doing this?
Right.
There's literally no money in it at all. Not that money should be a prime motivator. It shouldn't. But there has to be, with anything you commit so much time and effort to, some kind of reward, even if it is not a profit. But it just so that it isn't a massive loss. And I think most bands are finding that if they get asked to do a show in 100 miles away, they're getting offered the kind of money that wouldn't even pay for one of them to get there. You have to sort of say, this isn't really sustainable as a career, is it? So unless you've got a rich benefactor or who has those, or well-off parents or some savings that you don't mind dipping into, it's going to be very hard for musicians in the future to get to the level that we got to as a band, where the money was always pretty good from the start. If you were a decent band, you could play a show and make a ton of money. And if you sold, a few thousand records, you'd make a ton of money. Nowadays, you'd be lucky to sell a few hundred records.
I think you're right, but I think the motivations are the same. Is that when you're making music, especially with people you work closely with, whether you're friends or you're passionate about the project, and you'll just kind of do it because. And I think, and I don't think there's any financial gain big enough or loss big enough to take that away from us. Like we just have it in us to want to do it. And I don't think
we have to do it. And that's, I think, what I wake up with when I'm feeling like, God, this is hopeless. And then, but what else am I going to do? I love it.
Right. And then at the end of the day, like we've, to people who don't make music but do love it, we've got the goods, And
yes, and it is exactly that, and it is something that gives me pleasure beyond just like feeling good about a song in the same way that a fan would hearing it on the radio. I actually, genuinely makes me happier inside when when I'm working on music or I'm working with a band. The day goes much quicker. If I'm dealing with accounts or spreadsheets or a grant application, no, I mean, but life isn't all, it isn't all roses. You have to go through the dirt sometime to get to the roses.
Yeah, I think those you mentioned the gig, the a lot of travel and low pay, and I'm a performing musician, so I'll do 10 of those, and then for the one or two that do pay what they're supposed to, and occasionally you get one that pays beyond what you need, or and hopefully you can strike some kind of balance. I don't know that I'll ever really come out even, but
yeah, that's the thing. I think the balance is getting harder, but it shouldn't ever stop anybody wanting to make music. But it just means you've got to look at it slightly differently to how I did. I didn't ever have to have a job. Once I was in the band, I didn't have to work. I probably could have done with the extra money because we didn't have any money for a few years. But what's new there? But I think most of the musicians that I work with now, they all have jobs. I don't see how you could be a musician in the first 3 or 4 years where you're starting to get off the ground and not have a job. I don't know how you would do it. Whereas in the past, you definitely probably could do both. You could claim benefit much easier for 50 years ago than you can now. Now you can't do anything like that because it's the system doesn't allow it.
Do you feel like a part of your job when you find a new band is kind of helping them navigate this in a way?
I mean, I think when you do it as long as this, you realize that every single person on the planet is different, and every single band is going to have different needs, a different attitude, and different perspective to you. So you have to not impose yourself. I don't really impose my views on other people unless I'm directly asked for my opinion on something, because I think there's a lot of people with the internet and the social media, there's like Reddits and subreddits, and there's more information about anything. Whether it's correct or not is another matter, but there's more information about everything online than you could ever wish for. Remember, I grew up in a world where before mobile phones. I'm that old. There was no mobile phones. There was no internet, of course, till whatever it was, the late 80s. So most of my musical playing days were prior to knowing anything about anything. So we didn't know what contracts meant. Nowadays, you just type into some awful AI search engine, what does a contract look like? What does it mean? And it'll tell you everything in a few seconds. But it doesn't make anybody any happier. It's like it just gives you a bit of information, not always the correct one I should add, but it gives you information that might be helpful. So I think, we live in such a different world to the one I grew up in. I don't know everything. All I can say is, if you want my opinion, it's this. And you should, maybe you could look at doing this or you could doing that. But some bands want to talk to you every 5 minutes about what I should do this. What's this song like? Do you think this is right? Do you think this is wrong? Should we go on this tour? Should we do that day? Is this a good bass player? Is that, should I buy this jacket? Some people want answers all day long, every day, and other people never speak to you at all because they've got it all worked out themselves. And doing this as long as I've been doing it, you do realize that that's how it is, and you should just be there, make yourself available if needed, and if not, well, great, because I really want to be giving advice 24/7 anyway. I'm not a counselor. But you sort of become one by the very nature of the job.
What's the piece of advice that you find yourself giving the most, or is there something you always come back to? Because for me, I just always say, don't let the money be the deciding factor. Well,
that's a huge part of it. Yeah,
if you want to do it, then do it, and make it make sense for yourself is something I will tell people a lot.
Yeah, I concur with that. I think because of the label and the fact that when people come to me to present their music or whatever, they're already at that stage where I hope they've come to that conclusion on their own anyway, because if they haven't, then we shouldn't really be talking, because I don't really want to be wasting my time talking to someone that doesn't think this is the most important thing in life, because it has to be. Even if it's an inflated moment in time where they're so passionate about it, because we all have that at different moments, but it's usually in the first 10 years of making music, you're like, I can't breathe and I can't live without doing this musical thing. I happen to have felt like that most of my adult life, so I'm very, very lucky. But the bands need to feel that for me to even be having a conversation with them, because if I'm putting all this effort in to try and help them get from A to B, and they're just like, oh yeah, I could take it or leave it, then the relationship's probably not going to work, because I'm going to very quickly get pissed off and think, hold on a minute, I'm doing more work than you are, and you're the band. So I think that's pretty obvious from my perspective. What I need to find out to work out whether I can work with these people or not is, do I actually like them?
Yeah.
Because we could all listen to, go see bands every night of the week and find the most incredible artist out there, listen to some playlists or listen to the radio and discover music all day long. There's so much out there. It's ludicrous to suggest that music isn't that great at the moment. It is. It's incredible. It's much harder to find it than perhaps before, because there's so much of it. And how do you get to the good stuff quickly? But I have absolutely no problem in discovering and listening to music all day long that excites me. That isn't the issue when you run a label, when I'm doing this, because I could sign music literally every day if I wanted to. But there's no point in that if the people that you like musically are not people you can relate to emotionally or philosophically. And that's actually the much harder decision to come to. It's like, okay, I've had a couple of conversations and I don't know, I think they're cool people, but the only way to find out is to go and meet them. You have to sit down face to face with a band, with an artist. And if you can't, for whatever reason, through geography, then you probably shouldn't sign them, because it's too big of a risk to take. So I probably missed out on loads of bands that I just thought, well, I can't get there. I'm not going to be able to make this deal happen because. So it's a balancing act. I work with a lot of Brighton-based artists because they're here. I can go and see them. I can have coffee with them in 5 minutes. I can go and watch them play at a pub in 20 minutes. You know what I'm saying? So it's actually very easy for me to work with Brighton-based bands, which I do. Me and my wife co-manage several Brighton bands, because Brighton's got an incredible music scene in the same way that, where you live, in the same way that Denton has. It'd be a lot easier to work with Denton bands for you if you were running a record label than it would signing bands from around the world, because you could see them tomorrow. and in a way, I do kind of like that cottage industry. My space. I know my space. I know my venues. I know the sound. I know these people. I know the managers. I know the booking agents. I like it being a small world.
I do too. And like, you mentioned bands that you couldn't, you couldn't land or you couldn't get to or whatever. Do you have? You don't have to name names, but do you have specific ones where an instance where you thought, man, this could really be something, but you couldn't get it for one reason or another, and it did kind of blow up into something? Or
I'm sure there have been. I'll probably think of them as soon as I've got off the call with you. But right off the top of my head, I can't think like specific examples, but for sure, I've been talking to, bands where, the geography, or me being in here and them being like whatever thousands of miles away, has probably sort of made it impossible for me to make a decision on it, because maybe in the past, 20 years ago, I'd have gone, oh, fuck it, we'll just sign them anyway. The music is amazing. That'll carry it through. Mm-hmm. And then, 1 or 2 albums into the deal, you're like, wow, what have we done? The music's great, but they're not really very nice.
Yeah.
And I think when you do something for a passion project, which I still regard this as, even though, it is a 30-year-old business, but still look at it upon it as a sort of passion project. You've got to like the people that you work with, and all our staff, all my staff, I've been there like 18 to 30 years. There's no one at the label that just walked in last week. They're all kind of kids that have been with me from the very beginning almost. And they're all like friends, and they're like family. So we all have to feel connected to it beyond just like, yeah, that's a cool band. Let's see how we get on with them. Or they're going to be massive. Let's sign them. Those things we don't really kind of get sort of hypnotized by, because how the fuck do you know what's going to be massive? And we certainly don't, because that's not our kind of vibe. We're not looking at likes or followers or streaming numbers. Or I don't ever look at those things unless I need to look at them to send on to the radio people once we signed a band, and I need to see how well they're doing so I can get better opportunities for them. But in the beginning years, when you're trying to find a band, or you found a band and you think they're cool, I don't ever look at their statistics or their social media, because I don't care.
Yeah.
I literally don't care. It doesn't make any difference to me what other people are saying about them or what they look. Well, what they look like is mildly important, I suppose, in the sense of being presentable as a band live, or having an image, which I think is important. Actually, how they present themselves in their social media, I couldn't care less.
Right.
So we're probably not looking at the bands in the same way that other A&R people are. Well, or I'm not. I can't speak for anyone else, but I'm definitely not. So maybe that gives us a disadvantage. Maybe it gives us an advantage. I'm not quite sure.
So it sounds like you have to like the music, obviously, and then you have to like the people. Yeah,
really, because I've done it too many times where I wasn't quite sure what I thought about the people, but did it anyway, and then regretted it. Not just me, but other people on the label, where we were like, that was a mistake. They're a cool band, but if you're getting phone calls at like midnight and it's driving you up the wall and affecting your life, affecting your mental state, it's definitely not worth it. So as much as we can, we try and prepare before we ever put a contract together and send it to the band. We all kind of like, what do you think? How are you feeling about the band? Are we feeling good about it? Even if the manager was annoying and we found it really awkward dealing with the manager, we would probably not follow the band. We would probably not offer them a deal, because again, if it's going to be hard work, I don't mean hard work in the sort of putting the hours in. I mean hard work as in stressful.
Dealing with them.
Yes, then it's really not worth it for us, because we take everything very seriously and we take everything very personally, and we're all quite sensitive people, and we want to enjoy our job. And we would rather work with a band that sells no records at all, who are absolutely lovely to deal with, that we think are the greatest band in the world. And if they don't sell any records, well, okay, that's a shame in one sense, because obviously you need to sell records to continue in business, and they need to sell some records to get their second album made. But it is not a motivating force initially for me. Because I think bands need to develop. They need to make 2 or 3 or 4 albums before we're really going to see the color of their, what their vibe is. It takes artists a while to warm up. First album's either amazing or a bit like showing lots of potential and could be incredible in the future. You don't really always know what it's going to be until you get into it. And you have to give bands a time to grow and develop their own vibe and their own style and their own personality and their own sound, because generally first albums just sound a bit like all the bands they love growing up as kids. And that's cool. Sometimes that's brilliant. Talking Television, Marquee Moon, one of the greatest albums of all time. Not bad for a debut. Do you know what I mean?
Not bad at all.
But not many bands make the definitive album as album one. So lots do, but not everyone does. Sometimes,
Velvet Underground's been on my mind lately, and I recently acquired some of their records, and I guess I tend to focus on the back half, but the first one I had was the Velvet Underground and Nico, and when I come back to that one recently to listen, I go, man, this is brilliant. This is so good, right out of the box.
Yeah, right out of the box. Joy Division, which is one, I suppose. But you could think of tons that aren't quite right. They show a lot of promise and they're exciting. The Clash's first album it's not a great album, but it's certainly an exciting record and showed what they could become. But anyway, we digress. It's more a point of like, you need to give bands time to develop to make the brilliant album. Beach House is a really good example from my own perspective because of them being with Bella Union their whole career. But first album, it was a brilliant album, but it didn't kind of break through to the public in the way that it should have, it could have. Second album came along, did slightly better than the first in terms of sales. Again, a really lovely record, but it people were like, yeah, they're cool, but it wasn't getting through to people. But we knew they had it. We knew they had the gifts. A third album came along. Oh, okay. Teen Dream. Everyone started getting into it. Instead of selling a few thousand, it was selling, 10s, 15s, 20s. 20,000 records, which in Europe was very, very decent. And then when Bloom came out, fourth album, it went crazy, and there was selling hundreds of thousands of records. So you just have to have some belief in the band, and that becomes harder and harder in 2026. Not that you would lack belief, but the finances would prevent you from having much belief beyond the initial one, because
to that third album, fourth album point.
Yeah, exactly. Like the third, let's say, just hypothetically, a new band comes in and you say, okay, here's $10,000, go and make your record, and you put it out, and it probably cost you another $10,000 to manufacture the vinyl and the CDs, do some a basic press campaign in America and the UK, for example. Okay, you spent $25,000 doing all of this, and then the record comes out and they sell 100 copies. Okay, well, you're now still pretty much £25,000 in the red. Mm-hmm. Next album comes along. We want to make album 2. Can we have some money to make album 2? Okay, well, let's do the whole thing all over again. Let's give you another 10,000 and spend another 10,000 and do the whole thing exactly like we did the first time around. But now we're minus 50,000. Yeah. And your second record comes out and you sell 200 copies rather than 100. So what are we getting back in? Well, again, not really very much.
Yeah.
We want to make a third album. Okay. I don't think that's a great idea for me, because you're never going to make £50,000 back. And by the time I put the third one out, you're going to be 75 grand in the hole. And I don't have 75. You know what I mean? It's like the numbers become a problem at a certain point. And I think that makes it very difficult for young bands, which is why I tend to try and sign bands for as little as possible, not because I'm cheap, but because you don't want them to be in debt to their record label too much in the initial stages when it is incredibly difficult to sell records.
When you had an established band that you made this label for. What was the point of it at that moment?
Well, not to have to talk to record company people who we had, notoriously fallen out with over the years, whether it was at 4AD initially, and then with Fontana, we're part of Universal, who were our next label, and we ended up falling out with all those people to the point where we're like, why don't we just do it ourselves? Then we don't have to talk to anyone and just make the records. We had our own beautiful recording studio. We make the records, get someone to give us some money. They can give us a distribution deal where we can just be in charge of it all. And surely that'll be more fun. Well, that was, of course, very naive, because being in a band and running a record label couldn't be more different. And you know, we knew lots of musicians and tour managers and lighting designers and stuff. We didn't know any record company people. We didn't like record company people. So it took several years to make loads of mistakes and work out, okay, no, that's not the right person to, that's not the right press person. We need to try somebody else. Hey, do you know any good people? Oh, cool. We'll try them, you know, and just to talk to other bands and try and work out who good people were. And, you know, as the years develop and you go through it, you start to make more sense of it all and start to understand it. But certainly in the beginning, the motivation was not to work with anyone else and just be in control of it all ourselves and just try and keep out of everybody's way, because we were just very private. We didn't really want to be in the music business as it existed. We hated it. Mm-hmm. And I don't really think I've changed that much. I still have a lot of suspicion about it all, and there are some amazing people in the business. Of course, there are. You wouldn't be in it if there wasn't. And I have thousands of friends and acquaintances, maybe that I've met that I like through the years through music. So it's stupid to say I hate the music business. I actually love the music business, but I've disliked a lot of people that I've met in it because I think some of their, you know, ways of behaving towards artists aren't absolutely great.
Well, you know, my feeling is ever since I've been in the music business since the mid 90s, and so there's never been a big amount of money to be made, you know, since I've been in it. I don't know many people who've landed a major label deal.
Yeah.
And the ones I have, they didn't last a long time.
Exactly.
And so I've always been wary of people who are in the business who don't seem to really love music.
Yeah,
that's always been my kind of thing. Is like, well, why are you here? The only way you could really make a lot of money would be to like exploit a lot of people.
Exactly.
And
the contracts that they have do, and that's the thing, is like, not to pour any scorn on beggars or 4AD, because the contracts they were handing out back then when we were signing them was just the contracts that everybody had. It's not their fault really, but certainly over the years, having my masters owned by a company forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever is quite galling, and certainly affected my attitude to record labels for years, and why we started Bella Union to do completely opposite of what those labels did. We don't own anybody's masters. It's just pure licensing deals, like a loan. You know, we'll just loan it off you until, you know, however many years, 5, 10, 7, whatever years make sense, and then it's yours and you can have it back, which is very artistically friendly. But having been doing it for so long, and now having arrived in a period of the music business where everything is valued by the length of the term of your deal, and because I was always like, I will just do a really short term, all the successful records that I released and all the successful bands that I signed are generally out of those contracts. You know, they do get out of those contracts very quickly. You know, Fleet Foxes I signed in 2007. The deal was a 7-year deal. So in 2015, they get their record back, and I don't earn anything from it anymore, despite having invested very, very heavily in the band, helping them achieve million-selling records.
Yeah,
which is, now I've been doing it that long, I can see why the labels of before wanted to own the stuff, because then they'll make money off it forever. Yeah. And the reason they're obviously very delighted that they signed Cocteau Twins is because Cocteau Twins is now more popular than it ever was in the 80s and 90s, and they're the ones making all the money. I'm not complaining, because we're all doing fine out of it as well.
Yeah.
But the balance is very, very different. So I can understand why labels wanted to have longer terms and why labels again now these days want to have terms longer than the ones I've been offering them. So there's a lot of businessy things that maybe we did for the right reasons that affect the status of our label in 2026. But I'm not sorry about it. I think it was the right thing to do, and it continues to be the right thing to do, because you have a lot of people thinking, oh, labels are past it. There's nothing. We don't need labels anymore. They're useless. There's a lot of truth in that, which is why a lot of bands put their own records out. There's companies where you can get a pre-sale. You don't even make the vinyl. You just put it up for sale, and you wait for the money to roll in, and then you make it. There's lots of clever entrepreneurial ways to put records out these days. You don't need record labels. But some bands do like that structure. They do like the infrastructure of a record label. They like being able to talk to somebody. They like having someone to handle all the bullshit and the admin and the uploading and the press and the radio. Who wants to do all that stuff? Most bands don't really. But initially, when they're justifying their existence, I don't need a record label. I can just do it on Bandcamp. Okay, well, good luck with that, because you still have to make the CDs, you still have to do the artwork, you still have to make a video, you still have to make the vinyl. And if you don't sell any, you're still going to be exactly the same position I'm in, which is how to fund it with nothing.
Yeah. Well, and then there's people like you who, like the scene you were describing with your office now, where you're like, I've got an office, I've got a back line, I've got a warehouse, I've got a store, like I can do.
Yeah, because I'm trying to kind of help in more ways, because running a record label it's what do you do these days? You put the track up online and then you send it out to some people and hope it gets some playlists. I mean, it's not very difficult. Any idiot can do it, but to do it well, you have to offer more than just an ability to put the thing online, because you could do that. Any artist can do that themselves. Just upload it to DistroKid or whatever it is, TuneCore or whoever. Anyone could put out a record or put a song up today, in an hour's time. But having people to talk to about how do I do this, how do I do that, having a structure internationally, which we do, obviously, someone to do your press in France and Belgium, Holland, Switzerland, Austria, Germany. We have all of that because it's relationships I've built up over the last 30 years, people that I know are really good at what they do and do get really good results, so that if by chance you get offered a show in Belgium next month, there's going to be some people there who are promoting your record and your music and can join the dots between your show and your record. So, yeah, we can all slag record companies off and say, well, we don't really need them anymore. And in some elements, in some situations, that is true. But I would say in a lot of circumstances, labels are incredibly important.
Well, you've got you're in a unique spot because you got a cool track record. Now they're not all Fleet Foxes, but you got a long track record of really cool bands, so I think it must mean something to people when they bring something to you to be like, it would be cool if Simon put this out, if Bella Union put this out, and that would mean something.
For sure. I'm aware of that.
And I think it means something to other people, in the industry if you're behind it, and that because they're not, it doesn't seem like you're in search of the money. You want to find the good music. And so I think other people would probably go, hey man,
I think people do. I agree. I think people do gravitate. Some people do gravitate to us because they see it as perhaps helpful to be with a label like ours and on a roster with other artists that they might admire, for sure. I mean, to be honest with you, until we had Fleet Foxes, which, was obviously far and away the biggest selling artist of that era, that was a flag waver to a lot of other artists who maybe were coming out, like Flaming Lips, for example. Flaming Lips were with Warner Brothers globally for years, and then obviously they saw. I happen to know Scott, the manager, well, as does as do the Midlake kids, and for sure he noticed how well the Fleet Foxes record had gone in Europe, and when they were out of their deal with Warner's, we had a conversation. He was like, "Are you a fan?" And that's how we picked up Flaming Lips after a lot of to and fro. Same with Mercury Rev. Same with Spiritualized. Same with Ezra Furman.
That's what I mean, I guess. And these are, these bands might have more in common with your old band as far as been in the industry, been a part of some major deals, and go, you know what? Again, if Simon would just handle it and make us a favorable deal, we'd make some money. He could make some money. Everyone's happy, and
everyone's happy.
A lot less bullshit.
That has worked. That has worked well with those bands. But again, we're in another phase of the music business where the kind of there's a lot of companies that are cropping up, whether they're hedge fund kind of companies or investment companies behind them, where a lot of money who are interested in catalog because they see catalog as as equity, and I understand that to a large degree, and they can offer these bands that are out of deals, coming out of record deals like mine or with bigger labels like Warner's, coming out of those deals going, okay, what do we do now? We've got 5 of our albums back, and previously we've been getting a 50% royalty from these guys, which is perfectly fine when the record is out. But right now, the equivalent deals that these bands are getting are 80%, 90%. They can almost like get a distribution deal done on their catalog and get paid, instead of 50% of the income that comes in, get paid 90% of the income. So what are they going to do? Well, if they're smart, they'll take the 90%.
Sure.
Because those deals probably won't be around forever. So the fact that they are around right now is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of artists gravitating towards those kind of deals where they don't really get a service from the label, they just get a better rate because they don't really need a service because the record's already been out 20 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's almost like we don't need any A&R done on this. There's no marketing needed. You just need to repress it and put it in the shops. So, we don't need a 50-50 deal anymore because you're not spending any money on it. We need a much healthier deal. And I do understand that. I mean, I'll never get that myself with Cocteau Twins because we're always going to be on this kind of different kind of deal. And we don't have a manager. You know what I mean? The band doesn't really exist as it once did. We're all actively involved in it, but we haven't got anyone really representing us, and we're just happy with the status quo, really. But if I was Beach House, or if I was Interpol, or the Killers, or whoever it is that must be close to being recouped and out of their deals, I would be looking for the very, very best financial reward for my catalogue. And I can totally understand why. I hope these bands that are on Bella Union have the view that we've been with this label for 20 years. They've been good to us throughout that period. And I'm sure if we ask them for a higher royalty rate for our catalogue, they'll give us it. Because that's my attitude to it. It's like, well, I don't know how much you want until you tell me. And you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
If you want to come out of that deal and go into a different one now that we're close to the end of the term, let's have a chat about it. Because I'd much rather carry on working with people that I've worked with for 20 years than lose them to some hedge fund.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very different music business than the one I ever knew about when I was a little punk rocker playing the bass. But I guess everything comes to an end at some point.
Well, yeah, I mean, but for us stubborn people, keep fighting.
Yeah, you got to keep fighting, man. You got to keep getting up and taking another step.
How does okay, so I believe Bella Union kind of has an association with Denton. Is there how did Denton arrive on your radar?
Well, through South by Southwest initially. I mean, I guess I was not enjoying British music around about the turn of the century.
Mm-hmm.
About 2000, I came over to South by, not for the first time. I think I've been in 1998. It obviously hadn't probably been going very long, but I was like, wow, this place is amazing. It was such a cool festival back then. You know, there wasn't very many, well, there was hardly any Brits coming over and going to the festival. So it was quite unique just wandering around Austin. And I'd never been to Austin. Well, I don't think I'd been to Austin before. Maybe played a show there once, but didn't know the city at all. Just thought, wow, it's a really cool city.
Yeah.
Enjoyed my time, saw some incredible bands, and started really sort of thinking that this is where I wanted to sign bands like this, not the bands that I was listening to at home. I didn't like Britpop. I didn't like, the music scene in the UK was dull. I just was like, oh, it's just so boring. Well, I found the music in America really exciting at that point. And I met this band, Live to Experience.
Oh yeah.
In 2000, and saw them at this taco shack out in the middle of nowhere. Like, wasn't even an official show. It was just like some off-piste thing. It was in the middle of the afternoon, and there was like this fucking massive thunderstorm happening, and it was just perfect music for this weather. This sort of black clouds overhead, and this thunderclap, and then this sort of apocalyptic sound coming from the stage. And yeah, to cut a long story short, I spoke to the band pretty much as they walked off stage and said, well, hi, I do this label thing, and you guys are amazing. Do you want to put a record out on the label? And so that was kind of my first Texan signing, and certainly first awareness of Denton. And they kept, saying you must come and visit, and I did. And then I worked with a band who'd played with Live to Experience called the Autumns. They're actually from Los Angeles, but it was the Autumns that initially told me about Live to Experience. I was in the studio making an album with them in 2000, I think, or 1999, in Tom Waits' studio in Cotati, in the Napa Valley. And they were like, you have to go see this band. They're amazing, one of the best bands. And I was like, okay, cool. And actually, I think they rang Josh Pearson, the singer, up from the studio and said, we're here with Simon from Cocteau Twins. You need to talk to him. You need to tell him to come and see your band. So I talked to this guy, with a totally weird conversation. And I arranged to see him in Austin a couple of months later. And that's the first start of it all. And then Andy Young, who was the drummer of Live to Experience, he told me about Midlake. And then obviously I went to see Midlake and ended up befriending them and falling in love with their music. And then through them, I met Robert Gomez. Oh, no, actually, probably through Live to Experience, I also met Jet Screamer.
Yeah.
Will Capinos and those guys, and ended up putting their record out. And then I met Robert Gomez and Mandarin. I met so many cool bands from Denton, and would come there every year. Would go to South by initially, and then come and spend some time in Denton. And I found it a very vibrant scene. It was like a really cool scene in Denton back in the early 2000s. And for all I know, there might be a really cool scene happening there right now. I suppose because I'm in Brighton, sort of ensconced in my own little Denton. I haven't been to South by for a few years, and I've sort of not been paying attention to what's going on in Denton. But it just shows you how much cool music is in these small towns. Well, it's not a small town, is it? But, in towns around the States, just great little scenes. Great. All right. Great scenes cropping up all over. Oh, guys. Thank you. Great scenes cropping up all around the place. Bands falling in love with each other and recommending other bands. I love that when There's no sort of jealousy. It's just like, these guys are so amazing. You have to see them. And that's very infectious to me, because it's sort of like musicians talking about cool musicians that they like.
Yeah, I agree. I think people are, competitive in some ways. I think musicians can be, I can be, but I try to keep it just on the quality of the music, and never would I, like, forego someone else an opportunity just because it wasn't being offered to me, or if I really thought somebody could use a recommendation, then I would give it, and I think that's a cool thing when other bands, when someone like Andy Young is like, hey, if you like this.
Yeah, that is so cool. I'd never had that before, because I grew up in London but nobody was like that in London. It was way too competitive, and other bands would be just jealous. I don't want to tell you about my friend at this record label. He's my friend. I'm not going to tell him about your band.
Yeah,
it was just too competitive to find many circumstances like that. So when I came to Denton, he was like, "Oh, you have to come and see my mate's band. They're so cool." I just thought, wow, that's so unusual. But it led me to a lot of great friendships, and in a way, I suppose you could argue that Midlake were the kind of precursor to Fleet Foxes in a way. That their sound was in that world, and I think certainly Fleet Foxes were influenced by them. And Midlake didn't quite achieve the sales of a Fleet Foxes, but certainly musically they were the equal of them, I would say. And with Van Occupantha, definitely top five records I ever released on Bell Union.
Yeah, and it's got, I mean, it still makes lists. I know they just hit like a 20-year mark with
20 years. Yeah.
I mean, amazing. And the legend continues to grow. And Eric, talk about, I mean, I don't know. I can call myself stubborn, you can call yourself stubborn. I won't call him stubborn, but he's full of good ideas, he's full of good energy. He's doing something around here, always mixed up in something new and something good, and he cares about community. He cares about he cares about Denton. He cares about Midlake, and cares about himself and his family. And he's
yes, exactly. Just a top guy, and he's he will have experienced some really tricky times with the whole thing. Keeping a band together is never easy. Obviously Tim Smith going off and leaving the band, and like, what do I do? He's the singer, and just the determination to keep going and, make a really good fist of it and continue the band.
Yeah.
Continue to put out great records. It's not been an easy 20 years for sure. And even when Tim was in the band, it was not easy because, Tim is obviously a massively talented singer and songwriter, but he's a difficult person to be in a band with, because his perfectionism, whilst wholly admirable in one sense, is hard to be in a band with somebody that much of a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of almost a bit OCD about the whole thing, he would admit that. I'm not saying anything that he wouldn't acknowledge about himself.
No,
and I still work with Tim, so I obviously admire him enormously. I think he's an absolute massive talent. So Eric and the whole band have had to put up with a lot of difficult times, and maybe they're in a moment of change right now with Mackenzie moving out and Joey moving out.
Yeah,
who knows what the next incarnation of Midlake will be, but I'm sure there will be something.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking, is what I think as a unit, they will roll with it and continue.
And things change. You look at the lineups of most classic rock bands. They all change.
Yeah, it's sort of your ability to adapt to changes that will kind of be your path.
Exactly. And then if you don't, you don't. It's not the end of the world. It's like do something else. Be in another band.
Yeah. Start. Yeah.
I mean, I've done it.
New.
I had to cope with not being in the greatest band I could ever have been in, and I was never going to be able to, do a new version of Cocteau Twins with anybody else. So that would be ludicrous. But I managed to carry on and enjoy myself making music with other people, and whether that's something that they will do, let's hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. You talking about Tim leaving and I mean, did Eric did Midlake seek like counsel from you on that whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a lot in those days about this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think we knew it was coming because I remember several conversations with Tim, like before he left, where, it was like, but Tim, you don't want to do the radio show. Okay, well, explain to me why not. And he was so rational about it. He was like, we had a massive BBC radio offer for the band to come over and play live at Maida Vale, which is like one of those sort of beautiful recording studios that the BBC had until about a week ago, actually, in London, and they offered them this session. And I called him up because he was like, "No, I can't do it." And I was like, "No one had ever turned one down for us before." Because whether it's Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, or Midlake, the idea of playing a session live on the BBC at this beautiful studio, it's like, oh my God, this is why we do music, to be able to do things like this.
Yeah.
And Tim was like, "No, I don't want to do that." And I was like, and the band were like, I know. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. And I said, why doesn't he want to do it? And they were like, we don't really know. You'll have to talk to him yourself. So I called Tim at home. I said, "Hey, Tim, can you just explain to me why you don't want to do it? Because, really, when we're in bands, we dream of opportunities like this because, the BBC, for good or bad, it's a revered broadcasting organization and it has a huge listenership. And surely we all want your music to be heard by as many people as possible. So run me through why you don't want to do it so I can understand. Because I'm not annoyed. I'm just curious because, even for me, who's like, we turned down Top of the Pops back in the 80s and everyone was like, what the fuck are you doing? Sometimes people have reasons that don't seem rational. And I'm totally into that. And I asked him what his reasons were, and he just said, I don't want to do it because I worried that it'll sound terrible, and I don't want my family and friends to hear it if it's awful. And I was like, okay, let's talk that through, and let's see if I can reassure you of ways that maybe we could sort of combat the issues and make sure that it wasn't, whether it's rehearsal time or having someone there to help you with it. I can't remember what the conversation was, but I was, everything that came out of my mouth during that half an hour on the phone was like, I was thinking to myself, that was amazing what you just said. There's no way he's going to continue with his reticence to do it. Those are real pearls of wisdom you're coming out with there, Simon. Well done, you. And I was thinking this to myself, very rare, but I was thinking it to myself. I was saying it, thinking, this is going so well. This is all coming out perfectly. And I could hear Tim going, I can hear that. I totally hear. And he got to the end and he went, Simon, I totally hear what you're saying. And I'm really thankful you called me. And it really does make a massive, it's really massively important to me that you did that. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool, Tim. So you'll do it? And he was like, no, I don't want to do it, but I'm really, really glad you took the time to tell me why you thought I should.
Dang.
So at the end of that, I thought, okay, I see. So, Tim just has like massive anxieties about those kind of things.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It just seemed odd, because I think maybe the band had sort of protected me from seeing that side of Tim, because they didn't want the label to think Tim's really not up for doing stuff. And then obviously when Jules Holland TV show got offered, wow, well, that was a whole thing. I think the band put him under a lot of pressure to do it. And he did, again, I did talk to him. I said, you can't turn that down, Tim. I mean, it's too good. And he agreed to do it very reluctantly. And he thought he was terrible. And he wasn't, of course.
Right.
He did a perfectly fine job. But he just has massive anxieties about singing live, about any kind of live performance. And after a while, you think, well, I don't want to be responsible for making this guy thoroughly miserable and not enjoying his life. And maybe that's probably what prompted him to leave the band, is just that they all wanted to commit to it 100% and do every show offered and go on tour and be touring musicians as they had the right to do. And he 100% didn't want to do that. He wanted to sit home and be with his wife and just have a much quieter, more sort of nomadic, not nomadic, whatever the word is, like insular kind of lifestyle. And I totally respected him for that. But obviously it made being in Mid-Lake very difficult.
Yeah. I understand that. I mean, I think everybody has anxiety about something, but there's something to me about live performance is like I'm not a roller coaster person, but certainly the appeal of it is the danger. That's why we do it, right? If that's why you get on that thing, is there's fear, And
to be honest, I'm more on Tim's side than I am on Midwest. I hate playing live.
Really?
I don't enjoy it at all. But I just there's a lot of reasons behind that, and I think being in Cocteau Twins was a very complex, emotional 14 years for me. Yes, of course, I enjoyed a lot of it, playing shows. But when you're in a band with a couple who then are suddenly not a couple, and then there's drugs involved, and the whole thing is just like super stressful for many, many years. Your enjoyment of the live thing, for me, the only part of being in the band I liked on tour was the hour and a half on stage. Everything else I hated.
Yeah,
because it was just that was the only time that there wasn't like some tension going on.
Yeah.
But even then, in the end, the tension sort of crept into the live shows and stuff. So I think I wrap my my relation to live, I suppose, is a bit of a trigger to those experiences with the band, because I went on tour with my own band, Lost Horizons, and I pretty much did have a good time. I think in 2018 I did a whole lot of touring, bunch of festivals. I had a great band, 7 people on stage. It was a lot of fun. But because I had a band of 7 people and we were a brand new band, I just lost so much money doing it. I thought that this is too stressful. I can't deal with it. So in a way, I haven't really resolved the anxiety over playing live, whether it's because I was in a band where it was just so stressful, or I was losing money hand over fist. I just haven't had a lot of luck with the live experience. Maybe I need to just play bass in a successful band, and then I might enjoy it again.
Again, I just play locally. I'm a drummer, and I've done a bit of touring, but playing live is how I make a living. Yes. And those that you mentioned, that 90 minutes, or a lot of times for me it's 3 hours. I love it. I don't. Yeah. And to talk about the things, I mean, I like kind of showing up, and I like setting up, and maybe someone's got a joke, and maybe we're all just kind of, we're glad to be hanging out together. And
I would love to be in a band like that.
especially on Friday. Friday we haven't seen each other in a week, and so it's hey, how's your week? How's your week been? And we get together and do the thing, and it is really fun. Other than that, I mean, everything around it, the driving, the sameness of it, those are the parts I don't love. But just being on stage and getting to perform, and knowing that you sometimes someone's not paying attention, and massive fuck ups happen, and that's what I was talking about with like the ride. Just sometimes it's like exciting. Sometimes shit goes wrong, and you just deal with it. And it passes,
true. That is fun. When you've been doing it a long time, you sort of know how to ride it, know how to get through the difficult times. But I think I'm just in a different phase of life now. I would probably love it right now because it would be nice to go off and have some fun with some friends. But
and you DJ?
I mean, kind of. I don't do it for a job, but I mean, when someone asked me to play some records, I've got I've got a massive record collection, and this weird set of circumstances just came up with going to San Francisco to do this Cocteau's event, and then someone saw that I was going to that and asked if I would DJ at a club in LA, and I said, yeah, okay. And then someone else saw that I was doing that and asked me to go and DJ some punk singles at this Henry Rollins event, and on the same night, and I was like, yeah, okay. And then this guy Britt Govia, who I met with Fleet Foxes originally, who used to work with the Henry Miller Memorial Library, they come out to my wedding. The Fleet Foxes kids and the Midlake kids all came out to my wedding in Carmel, near Monterey, and we stayed at this hotel. We had our wedding in Carmel, and he called me up about a month ago and said, "Hey, I see you're playing in DJing in San Francisco. Do you fancy coming and DJing at this place I run in Carmel?" I was like, "No way, I got married there." He said, "Yeah, I remember, because the Fleet Foxes guy." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, where would I DJ?" Because me and my wife have been thinking, how the hell do we get back to Carmel one day? Because it's expensive, And he said, "It's a hotel called La Playa." And I was like, "That's where we got married."
Yeah.
So he was like, "Oh, cool. Well, we'll buy your flight and put you up in the hotel." And, I was like, "Okay, great. I'll do it." So, these amazing little opportunities just all come out of nothing, out of nowhere when I was least expecting it. And I'll be away for a couple of weeks. So
it's about
a lot of fun.
Being open to opportunities, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. I am quite open to anything as long as it sort of sounds fun and different to what I'm doing.
I know you mentioned kind of book tour stuff. Is that still kind of going on?
Yeah. I mean, just happens. I think the book came out in America late last year, and I did about 2 weeks doing a tour around the US, the East Coast, West Coast, bookshops, record shops. And I think because of this whole thing with the Cocteau event in San Francisco, it's sort of people see that I'm coming over and just like, "Hey, do you want to come and do a book talk at so and so and so and so?" So one thing leads to another, and the book is still relatively fresh. So I guess if people haven't seen me talk about it and I haven't been to that particular city, it's an opportunity for me to get over there and do something.
What made you want to write a book?
I just think I was bored of people saying, "You should write a book."
You shut people up.
Yeah. It's like, "You've got such an interesting life. You've had such an interesting life. You should write a book." I was like, "Have I?" And then I sort of thought, yeah, I probably have, and I do like writing. I write a lot of essays. I write a lot of articles for magazines, or did. And it was certainly something I enjoyed doing, the short form writing thing, 1,500 words, something funny or witty or whatever. I liked it. And then I sent a couple of pieces to this publisher who'd got in touch with me and said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" I was like, "Well, I haven't thought about it hard, but I've thought about it. But it just seems like such a lot of work, and I'm fundamentally quite lazy. So I'm not sure I have the patience to sit down and spend a couple of years writing a memoir. And I don't think I could be able to remember everything because I've got terrible memory. And he said, well, you'd be surprised. You know, people, once you start kind of looking into the events and checking calendars and finding old photographs, memories just sort of suddenly kind of open up. And I thought, well, okay. So I sent him a few ideas, samples of my writing, and I was an agent actually. Sorry, not a publisher. It was an agent initially, and then he said it's brilliant. You should write the book. So then I went off for a few months and wrote what I thought was the book, and sent him everything, and he was like, "Oh, this is amazing. So when are you going to finish it?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, this is a third of a book. The book needs to be 100,000 words. This is 30,000 words." I was like, "Oh, I thought that was the book." I thought I'd finished. And he went, "No, no, 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 no." So I kind of thought, fuck it. So me and my wife went on holiday. We went sat by a beach for a couple of weeks, and she went and sunbathed, and I just sat under the umbrella, just typing away on my laptop, and got about another 20,000 words done, and then came back and then just wrote every single day, disciplined like a proper writer might do. 8 o'clock in the morning start, finish at 2, and then get on with my record label stuff. And I did that for about 6 months or something like that. And then I sent him the thing, and he was like, that's too much now. You've written 130,000 words. We're going to have to lose a load of this. I'm like, oh, for God's sake.
You get an editor then?
Yeah, well, the publisher was the editor, and he was a really fun, amazing guy. And whilst there were some bits that we kind of argued about a little bit, that I didn't really want to chop out, I ended up like being like, you know what, you're the book guy. How the fuck do I know about books? I barely read a book in the last 10 years. So I listen to audiobooks. I don't have time to read books. I listen to audiobooks when I'm out on my bike or walking the dogs. So I thought, I just trust this guy. He knows what he's doing. All he does is music books. That's his job. And he's a really nice person too. So I let him edit the book. And he was very gentle and very sensible. We only fell out about a couple of things. And then he told me I'd have to wait a year and a half to put the book out, which I was like, okay, well, if I have to, I have to, So that was quite a blow, because when you finish something, like musicians, we finish the song today and we want the song out tomorrow, you want to sit on it for a whole year and a half. So that was quite painful. But then once it came out, and once the people started reacting to it, and the reviews started coming in, I was quite relaxed and happy about it. And then really loved doing book tours. I did a whole book tour in the UK, rough trade and resident, go around all the record shops, go to a bunch of festivals and talk to people. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And then did the US one a year later.
Is it, you said a lot of questions came to mind. First of all, once you're done with something like that, is your memory changed when you've collected them all in one place like that? Does it really, do you have like a different perspective on your story when you see it kind of or hear it written out like that, and when you organize it in such a way?
I mean, putting it all into a book that has a beginning and a middle and an end does sort of help in terms of understanding your life a lot better. I definitely know myself more as a result of writing the book, and understand myself better, understand my family, my father, a lot better by writing the book. The book is in large part a kind of love letter to the Cocteau Twins, but also to him. And he was a father that I didn't really know. He was a very sort of absent father, and he died very young as well. So, the big part of the book is about him.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't. When I started the book, I didn't know what I felt about him. I didn't understand our relationship. I didn't know not just the relationship as a son and a father have, but the relation as a music, as me being a musician and him being a very successful musician and arranger and producer and fucking everything. I didn't understand what I was to him or what he was to me. So the book it wasn't intended to be an education to me, but it certainly did become one.
That's really cool. That's what you'd hope, or at least I would hope, because I related to something you said. You don't come off as a lazy person. You seem like you have a lot going on, and I identify as a lazy person, but what I do to combat that is say yes to a lot of things and agree to a lot of things and by contrast do a lot of things, but it's not in my nature to I'm not like self-motivated, I would say. I just go, yeah, we'll do that, and then I just fill my day with stuff that I would just sit around otherwise.
Yeah, it's very easy to sit around. I certainly do agree with that. Certainly, I'm probably being a bit unfair to myself by saying when I say I'm fundamentally lazy, I think like I'm not, because I like do a lot of stuff. But like you, I'm like, if you gave me the choice today of sitting on the sofa and watching Netflix all day long, or going to the office and looking through contracts and talking to my accountant and my lawyer, I would definitely rather sit on the sofa and watch Netflix. So I feel like that is a bit lazy, but I probably, I think I deserve a bit of lazy every now and then, don't you?
Absolutely. I do.
I just got to give the dogs some treats because they're staring at me like...
Well, they deserve it.
Yeah, they deserve it. Carry on then. I'm listening.
Oh yeah, I didn't really know that. I didn't know about your father and his his cool career, and I'm very excited. Like I said, I just bought your
book. It's such a big story, and I did actually put out 2 albums of his work on Bella Union in 2017. 2 different like double album compilations, sort of collating all his work. Because I didn't know, I knew he'd done some of the cool things that he did, like he worked with Dusty Springfield and David Bowie. He did some amazing things. Scott Walker, who's one of my heroes, worked with the Walker Brothers. And I knew that stuff, but I didn't know all the kind of funny little weird things that he did. And I spent years kind of just researching it online on YouTube, and I was like, oh my God, he did all the stuff he did, going on Discogs and finding all these rare, obscure tracks that he was involved with, and just suddenly thought, wow, what a life he led. So a lot of the book is my research into that, and then discovering a load of tapes that my mum left of him talking to my mum before he died about his life.
Interesting.
And I had all these audio tapes that I'd never heard until I started researching the book. So that was like a sort of window into a whole world of fascinating information that I hadn't previously known. So the book is it features a lot of that stuff. Obviously, the label a bit, my early life a bit, the Cocteau Twins a lot, I suppose, because that's really probably the thing that most people are interested in. And then right up to the present day, really. I don't think I could write another one because everything. There's a couple of stories that didn't make it in, but that's more of an editorial decision rather than because I forgot to write them. I think everything is in there. I can't think of anything I missed out too much.
Did you enjoy it? Would you present it with another opportunity? Would you want to do Would I mean if it?
Maybe I could maybe do the Bella Union story at some point, because there's only a bit of that in there. Not a bit, but there's a little, like, there's a bit about middle eight Fleet Foxes, John Grant.
Yeah.
There's a few bits and pieces in there, but mostly not. So I could definitely do a Bella Union book, but it would have a limited appeal, I think. Only to the sort of real hardcore fans. But maybe I will do that at some point. But it's a long old job writing a book. It probably, it's a lot of work. And I feel like I'm in the mood to make music next. Mm-hmm. Once I've got this year out of the way, and next year's the anniversary of the label, 30th anniversary, I feel like I need to make some music, because that's the thing that gives me the greatest pleasure away from working with bands. I do still adore shutting myself in that studio over there.
Oh, nice.
And I haven't done it for like 3 or 4 years. The place has just been full of gardening tools and old shoes and bottles of beer and prams and buggies and excess chairs that we can't have in the house. It's just full of junk. And then I finally tidied it up about a week ago, threw everything away that I don't need, and I was like, oh my God, it's a studio. I must use it again. So
you must make some music.
I will do. I definitely will do. That's next year's task.
Well, hey, Simon, thanks so much for making time for me today. And I think we both have a mutual love of Eric Polito. And thanks to him for putting us together. I've loved chatting with you, and I'm really enjoy your company. If I'm gonna check out this book, and maybe we could chat some other time once I know a little bit more about you from your writing.
All right, man. Listen, have a great weekend.
You too. Enjoy your trip.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.